and welcome to Talk Tonight. And I hope that you're all well and everything is good. We are back on episode 9, which is called Am I an Idiot? So people will sort of like think, well, why is that like a good topic to talk about? But it needs to be a little bit more deep than sort of like just being an absolute idiot or an absolute clown. I guess that like the hardest type of the type of disease that I've got called is called mitochondrial disease. I won't talk too much about that one um, at some point during this podcast, but what we'll talk about is am I an idiot? And to say that by myself um, is quite honest. And having good days and bad days and all the rest of it. But when you've had like professional work over a period of time, when you can't work, people start to think that things like universal credit and PIP and all the rest of it, to do all of that stuff. When I had a stroke, what looked like a stroke, sort of like 2 years ago, people were sort of like thinking, well, Robbie had a stroke. He's not working anymore. He's not doing boxing shows anymore. Blah, 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 blah. And it just goes like down and down the road. And then like two years down the road, like I'm still not working. And people think that because I'm doing a podcast, that means because I've got like loads of money and all the rest of it. That's just like not true. And that is like relatively, honest. And for me to say that, like having things like fatigue and worry when you're trying to put together your CV and that sort of stuff, like it becomes pretty real at times. So let's be a little bit more of a topic, and let's talk about about the emotional and mental impact of having a non-cure disease. It's pretty serious, right? I guess that like when I had a stroke, and I know that like other people who've got like mental issues and mental health issues and real problems. So when you talk about like, okay, so let's talk about mitochondrial disease then. So mitochondrial disease is a non-cure disease, and it affects every part of your body, where it's like checking every single stop of like the power that goes into your brain and goes into your body. And having mitochondrial disease can affect like the power that goes through your body. And because my body doesn't work properly, it affects some of my hands, some of my back end of my body, my back. There's so many issues with mitochondrial disease, and people think that because I've had a cure, because I've had a stroke, and there's this cure, and I'm now being able to sort of like to speak better. People start to think that like, oh yeah, he's going to be better. Unfortunately, I've got a non-cure disease, and there's a lot of people, in the world. I think there's something like one to four that you will have some sort of anxiety, mental breakdown, and all the rest of that sort of stuff, and that can become like really, really difficult for people. And it's like it's like an honest conversation when like you're trying to be like to have a little bit more of tumor, a little bit of humor about some sort of those sorts of things. But yeah, so like trying to work. So I've not worked. I had my last job with an IT company. Everything was fine. I had a fantastic job, fantastic work. I had the best car that I ever had. I had a really nice Merc. It was stunning. It was everything that I wanted. Car was working. and she's still working now. But Cara was starting to put her business together. We had a really nice house. Everything was going like absolutely great for us. And all of a sudden, I started really unwell. And to not be in that sort of situation when you can't like work, um, it's like everything starts to break down in your brain, and it just affects like everything that you do. And it's it's hard because like people think that things like, oh, they're scrounging and all the rest of it, and it's just like it's just not true. And when I go through like things like mitochondrial disease, and people who are really struggling with things like cancer, and I see it like day by day. You see it on the TV, like are people like sort of like having you know with cancer and that sort of stuff. It's like it's horrible, horrible diseases, and like there's so many diseases out there, and charities that are sort of like trying to support like as many sort of like charities as they possibly can, and they're not that they're doing charities to find out the cures for non-cure diseases, and it's so hard when you're trying to work and you're trying to sort of like your day by day, you know, business. Like, as everyone thinks that like doing a podcast is like easy, it's not. Like, it really is not. Like when you're trying to be like obvious about real about like yourself, and especially when you're doing a podcast like this one, I'm doing like podcasts like 10, 11, which are with other people. And when you're being like really obvious with people, um, it's it makes me feel better when I'm trying to do a podcast, and it can be like a little bit more chatty with people and all the rest of it. But like for me to sort of like to get myself up in the morning is like really tough. And like when you're doing a job, like when you've got like a really good job, you still got to get yourself up at 6 a.m. You've got to get like your kids out. You've got to get like something to eat. You got to get yourself ready to go to school. You got to get the kids to go to school. Then you got to go and get your job. You're sort of like sitting down with people. You might have your own business. You might not have your own business. There may be sort of like there's jobs which are like really stressful. There may be jobs which are, you would think that are not tough. But, when you're trying to do like working really hard and you're pushing yourself, and I know like I've got a friend of mine like who is a brickie, and like he's been doing a brickie since he was about 16, 17 years old. Now he's like 38, and he's just working, but he's got so many issues like with his hands and with his back. And to do something like a brickie, you must be like so hard like to do like your job, and to do that, like to do your job on like a day by day basis is tough. And like when you've got like a non-cure disease and something comes down the word and it says like you've got cancer or you've got mitochondrial disease, we've had to go to like Oxford University, and then there's so many. I've been into hospital like 5 times in the last 6 weeks, like talking about my heart, talking about like it was talking about my heart, then it was talking about I've got type 1 diabetes, I've got like this, that, and the other. And I just think that, like, well, how the hell am I trying to get myself back to work when I'm struggling with a non-cure disease? But no, I'm trying to push myself out to do this podcast, to get out talk tonight, to get out to people as much as I possibly can. But sometimes when you just like, you just, even when you've got your normal job, sometimes you just want to take a sickie. Like, let's be honest. Like, do you just want to be like, just do a sickie? Like, and I guess that's like when you sort of like push yourself then into a mental health issue. And people, they, especially during COVID as well, like there was so much stress, which made you like had to go to work, or like I was very lucky because I was working remote, like I am like right now. Like I was working remote. I was doing everything that I needed to do, um, and I was lucky. I finished my job at Drayton Manor, and then obviously I was lucky to find a job which was like online. And yeah, everything sort of like worked really well for me, but like I was still under stress. Like I couldn't see my younger son, and I guess that like things like COVID and that sort of stuff affected everyone's sort of like work set. And like I guess that like when people are like trying to sort of like to be practical about your work situation, trying to put together your CV, like I know like a lot of people now, they work like a couple of days of the week and then they work remote. And I guess that's like a really good situation for people. But it still puts under stress because like you still got to look after your kids. You still got to, when you've got children, you've got to be able to sort of like to deal with that sort of situation. But like, when you're trying to be like real, it can be like really, really tough for you. And yeah, you're trying to be like, you know, the emotional and mental impact, you know, when you sort of like you die into like lots of like diseases and lots of like anxiety and mental health issues, and the black dog when you like you just got like you can't do it, you just can't get yourselves up and do your job, and that's fine. Like, be real. If you are feeling like you just can't do it, it brings you into a little bit of a black dog. You start to feel like really, really rough. And like, you got to be honest with yourself. You got to be able to feel like you can push yourself as much as you possibly can. But sometimes you just can't get yourself up. Like, even when like I had a really high impact job and I was doing everything that I needed to do, I couldn't. I was struggling. I was really struggling, and like I know there's a lot of people out there who do jobs, and there's lots of people in me, like a lot of my friends, that work really hard, even as like teachers, and about like like your day to day jobs are like they're really really hard. So let's talk about remote working. So like I always liked to enjoy working remote working. Remote working is obviously like when you're working in a video, you're talking, then you obviously have a meeting with, someone who might be in like the Netherlands, they might be in America, and then obviously you're gonna try and sort of like figure out your times, your time rates and that sort of stuff. And like when you're working remote, it's like it became into a COVID situation, and you started to work really well. Again, I enjoyed working remote. It was a good thing for me. I enjoyed it, and it was good for me to sort of like to meet out with some new people from around the world, and it was good. But like you sort of like you are under pressure. Um, you still got to be able to drill down into your work. I had like I've been doing with I was direct and sales marketing for a company, for lots of companies over the last sort of like 15 years. I was very lucky that I had a job at T-Mobile, and then obviously I moved across from Merthyr, and then obviously when Jack became around, I was in a situation where like things were I was struggling financially, and then obviously I, moved to Coventry, and I had a really really good job, but like I was still under stress. I had stress of anxiety of family day situations. I still struggle with it like now, like just getting myself up in the morning and and doing something, and people struggle with, trying to put yourself together to work is difficult. And you're trying to be like, you're meeting with people when you're doing like your job, and you're meeting with people, and sometimes you just don't gel. You don't gel with people, because like I was um, I was too direct with people. When I look back at it now, I was an absolute dickhead, and like, that. But everyone then that I worked close with, everyone used to think that I was great, and I felt very positive about myself. But then obviously when I would sort of like jump in the car and come back, to see the kids and that sort of stuff, and see Cara and all the rest of it, like, it's like a day by day situation. And then obviously we were, in the boxing gym as well. So like everything was like 14, 15 hours a day. By the time you get home, you might get something to eat, and then it'd be like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And like, I know that people like, especially like a lot of friends who worked in London, you know, so when you talk about people then who are going like through the what you call is like 9 to 5, it's never 9 to 5, like ever. It's never 9 to 5. It's never a real situation. People, when you've got like a manager above you and they say, "Oh, you're working 9 to 5," but like it's more. It's not like it's not. You got to have like a good, work together with people to do things right. Because like I had some managers who were absolute shockers, like we're just horrible. And I felt that sometimes I was horrible to people to begin with, but then obviously I started to, as I became like a bit older, and a bit sort of like real to people, I started to be a little bit more confident and a bit like be able to talk to people a little bit better. And I guess I like talk to like does work like relatively well like that. But yeah, like 9 to 5 work, people used to say like, "Oh, it's more," and then like you sit there till like 6 p.m. and people are like, "Oh yeah, I need you to do this," and you're like, "Well, is this 9 to 5, or is this like, you know night working?" I worked like, when I was in the navy, it's like 6 hours on, 6 hours off. It was never 6 hours, 6 hours off. It was 6 hours, and by the time you had something to eat and and all the rest of it, it'd be like you'd have about 3 hours like asleep. You just won't be able to sleep. And when you look back at it now, like it's just absolutely like a mental situation. Like it puts you into anxiety and pressure. And I guess that like a lot of businesses now, I guess that like labor are supposed to be like, "Oh, you're doing much better, you should be getting this, you should be getting that," and then all of a sudden then you've got to be able to pay like your basic food. You've got to be able to, put together your family to pay for everything that you possibly can. And they're saying one thing and then they're not saying the other. And they're putting pressure on every single business that work out there now, right now. And it causes like massive, massive issues. And when you talk through it, like it puts you, as a family, as a pressure to do business work. So like there needs to be more workplace support in each business that work out there. And it's very easy for me to say that because I'm not working. But because I'm not working, I'm trying to find solutions where I can work. Just because I've got a non cure disease, does that mean that I'm an idiot? And that like I'm sorry because like you know I'm not good enough anymore, and that is like that's honest. Like, is it, you know like when you put under pressure of as a family, and then you put in pressure into your workspace, you know is that like is that honest? Like, you've got to be like, quite real about your situation. I'm trying my best. I've, trying to put my CV together. what do I want to say about my CV? Okay, so so I've got a CV now which lasts like 20 years, and even when I had a newspaper, when I was like 14, I used to work at the rugby club. I worked at, to do the plates and all the rest of it. And then obviously I was working at McDonald's, and I guess that was like one of the first jobs that I ever did was like in McDonald's. Am I not good enough to go and work at McDonald's anymore? Like, just because I've like had a stroke, can I go and work in a shop? I don't know. Like, honest, I don't know. Um, but because like I've had like a really good job and really good money and all the rest of it, like, and then all of a sudden you haven't. Like, what do you do? You have to try and find out solutions as much as you can. But if you are unwell, it's okay to be real. It's okay to talk because, like, when you've got like serious anxiety and mental health issues are serious, and like it affects your work rate, like, and it affects your day-to-day stress line. It does hurt you. And yeah, like when I was in work at McDonald's, it was just like it's like everyone used to think like it was a bit of a dosh. Like, I'd always work in the trying to get like the burgers and that sort of stuff. Like, because I would always like whinge about like I didn't want to work in the front. I always wanted to be in the back. And me and my mates used to work in McDonald's, and yeah, I've still got friends now. Like, we've all used to work in McDonald's. Every single one of us has worked at McDonald's. Is that okay? Like, do I have to, like, and I'm like 43? Should I go work back in McDonald's? Like, you know, do I have to do it? I'd probably have to pay more, or I'd have to get like a better job. Like, I had a cheeseburger yesterday, to go to McDonald's. But like, is it okay to work at McDonald's? Does that make you look better, to work at McDonald's than works at like a really high level IT company, which like pushes you under like super stress, right? So is it easier then for you to go and work at McDonald's? Is that like okay? Like, there's no stress, or there's no like you can be real, like whatever you want to do. But like, even if you want like a really really good job, just because you've got like a non-cure disease, does that mean like, even like I need some support from things like universal credit? But then obviously then there was a part of the NHS which helped slightly to find out more about my hearing aids. Just because I've got hearing aids, does that mean like because I'm deaf? Like, does that mean then like I can't work? Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean, again, like doing the type of job that I used to do was like quite stressful and like quite pushed together. Can I do it anymore? I don't know. Like, that's again, which is in a pretty honest conversation, I guess. Um, my big challenge, like through this mitochondrial disease and work, is my aphasia. So, like, losing confidence has been my real problem. Now, this is obviously podcast number 9 compared to podcast number 1. So you will see my confidence starting to come better from podcast number 1 to what is today, which is podcast number 9. So we started Talk Tonight back in January. No, sorry. It was back in October. And now we are in February, nearly in March. And I feel like really positive about like what the forward is for Talk Tonight. But I still don't know. Like, I'm sat here now on a Sunday, and I had to get myself up this morning. I was starting to feel tired at about 9 a.m. Cara's got, she works a lot over the weekends. Um, and to get myself up this morning was quite tough. I had to, get myself something, make myself come in for breakfast, to have a drink, get myself sorted. And then to put together the podcast. The podcast I've planned this for the last week, but then obviously I'm doing it now, like, because I feel okay. But like on certain like days, like I really do struggle. But like, does that mean that like I can't work? Do people then think like because my podcast, my speech has improved like slightly better than compared to what it was like 4 months ago? Yeah, I'm making relatively better. But then, like about 4 weeks ago, they're saying like, "Oh, you still got, you might have a heart problem. You may have like issues with your diabetes. You may." So I'm just like, well, look, I'm trying to make some support, like with my family, to be able to sort of like to pay better. But then, obviously, when I'm trying to be like real, you've got to be like quite real with yourself. um, but there's always support, I guess. And I know that like um, things can be like really, really difficult when you're sort of like trying to get yourself, your speech together, your aphasia, your speech, your confidence um, to work well. You've got to be confident. You've got to try and help yourself to put yourself together. But if you need support and you need help, then there's people out there who will be there to talk to you. Like, and that's honest. That's really honest. Like to sort of like say like if you are feeling like bad days, you've got to be like real with yourself, and you've got to be real with you. There is a support line with anyone. And I know that like in Talk Tonight, we always put out like our support links that we can get out there and support as much as we possibly can. Um, but I know that like I waffle a little bit about like my podcast, but um, I try to be as real as I possibly can. And I'm only here to support as much as I possibly can. And a lot of people said that like when you do podcasts, they say like in the first three, you won't carry on. I will carry on. I will fight um, to find out more information about my non-cure disease, which is called mitochondrial disease. I am supported by the Lilly Foundation. They've been absolutely fantastic with me to find out. Again, they are pushing about mitochondrial disease because people don't understand what mitochondrial disease is. But I know for a fact that people through mitochondrial disease, they do work. So is there any reason that I can't work? I can't maybe support any other charity? We worked with multiple charities when we were doing boxing events. So when I was doing it like over the last 10, 11 years, why can't I do it now? What is my problem? Is me getting myself together. And that's, I guess, like is an honest situation. Um, so working in a high level situation, don't put yourself into something that you be honest. Don't be under stress with people who are just like they're not there to support you. They're not there to support you at all. And that's not right. And if you are needing support, even in your workplace as well, don't be that don't be that person that can't talk. Like, be honest. And anyone who is a super manager, IT manager, if you are a super manager, be real to people, be a good person. Because like all you're doing is making yourself look pretty silly, and you should be supporting people as much as you possibly can. Any business that you got out there, you know, LinkedIn, awful, awful. Because like when I needed help, LinkedIn disappeared. You disappeared. Like, and it all looks like everything is great. Any of like socials, you can be like, oh yeah, like, my life is brilliant. I look support. I look absolutely brilliant. My business, my work is amazing. Then when you turn the lights off, how do you feel then? How do you feel then? Isn't it? Like when I turn my light off now, I might not be feeling like relatively well. At least I'm being honest. Like, at least I'm being honest. And, you got to be able to talk. You got to be able to support people when you're working. And if you're not ready to support people, then don't. Just like go and find a job, but you can. Like, and that's like that's like a real situation, right? Because like you should always do something that you enjoy. Like to do the podcast now, I enjoy it. I enjoy doing it. It does stress me out a little bit when you're doing putting everything together after like you've done your recording and all the rest of it, and then need Cara to do like that sort of stuff. But I am trying to get like much better. Like podcastal can be like a bit of a sicker like. But we put everything through Spotify and through Apple and on YouTube as much as we possibly can. And to get that information out can be a job, right? To get like a job, to get out of your hard stress, right? To get yourself out and trying to get my identity after my stroke, my mitochondrial disease. I'm still a person. I'm still me. I'm still Robbie. Um, I'm just different now. I'm just more of a, I think more as much of I possibly can. Like when I couldn't even like tell you what a banana was, I couldn't, make a bacon sandwich and all the rest of it. And I still need help sometimes from Cara. Like, I couldn't pick up some of the clothes the other evening. I had to walk myself down the stairs step by step by step because I was like really struggling a little with my back. But yeah, I guess that's like it's one part of trying to put yourself together as an identity. And I have got an identity. I am me. And anyone that's working on your business and any of your support links, anyone that you work with, whatever type of work that it is, you're a normal person. You are a person. And like, don't ever people tell you that you're not good enough. You're not good enough. And that's been my I've been annoyed about it, about people like when I needed to help people, they didn't help me. And I guess that's it's not an anger. Like, do I really care that much? Not really. But like when I see people who are not supporting as much as they possibly can, then it's just not good enough. Because I've just got a disease, because I've got like I'm not, my speech isn't the best as what used to be. Does that make me sure that I can't do it? I have to tell myself. I've got to get myself up in the morning. I've got to be able to do it and go for it as much as I possibly can. Because otherwise, like, I'm going to be like, a, you know, a stroke mess day by day. And I guess that's the truth. I guess it's the truth. And I'm trying my best to be a new person, a different person, but I'm still me. I'm still me, and you're still you. Anyone is you are you, and you'll be able to find ways where things figure out for themselves. And I guess that's what we're trying to do with Talk Tonight. It's the most like supporting thing. So, a conclusion, right? So, just to sort of like to end this particular podcast that we're doing, be real, be honest as much as you possibly can. Again, whenever you work, whatever you do, you can do it. I know that I'm trying to do it, but I'd like to say thank you to everyone who jumps on lives and jump on Talk Tonight and TikTok and YouTube and Spotify and Apple, and to get out the stories about things like mitochondrial and non-cure diseases. And I know that sometimes we, might be like waffling and all the rest of it, but we're just gonna go good night, good day, have a good 5 days of work. And if you can't do it, get some support. Lots of love. Robbie from Talk Tonight, out.